Hello and welcome to the Beyond 6 Seconds podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel, and on today's episode, I'm really excited to be here with my guest, Linda Maloney. Linda served 20 years in the Navy and was one of the first women in U.S. history in 1993 to join a combat military flying squadron. She was designated a Naval Flight Officer and is the recipient of numerous military awards, including the Distinguished Air Medal for Combat. She also was the first woman to eject from a Martin Baker ejection seat from her A-6 aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean. She retired from the Navy in 2004 and started her second career as a defense contractor, author, and business owner. Linda's currently the CEO of Women Veteran Speakers, the first speakers agency of its kind that exclusively offers exceptional women military veterans as event speakers, trainers, coaches, and facilitators. She's also the project director for the Proudly She Served project, which highlights women who serve or who have served in the U.S. military and tells their stories. Linda, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So happy to have you here. So
Yeah,
excited.
thank you. Yeah, it's so great to be connected with you. We've been trying to do this for a little while, right?
Yeah, we have. It's been a while. I actually met you in person, like way before this whole pandemic. Right. It seems so long ago, but I'm glad we were able to reconnect now during this time and
absolutely
learn more of your story. So yeah, I'd love to start off and just learn more about your big story of being the first woman to eject from the Martin Baker ejection seat from your aircraft. So how did you even wind up in that situation, in that type of aircraft?
So I was stationed in Key West, and it was in a support squadron, which meant that it was not a combat squadron. It was before the combat exclusion law was repealed in 1993. So this was 1991. And I was flying as a Naval Flight Officer in the A-6, and we were flying with another A-6 up off the coast of Jacksonville. We were doing training missions against an aircraft carrier. And so we came off of the ship, and we were going to go get some gas and then go back out in the afternoon to do some more runs against the ship when our aircraft experienced a total hydraulic failure. And so for those that are not familiar, your hydraulics lubricates all the surfaces of your aircraft. And so if you don't have control of your surfaces, like your flaps, your slats, your gear, your landing gear, I mean, that kind of puts you at a great disadvantage. You can't really control your aircraft either if you don't have control of your flaps and slats. And so the A-6 is a two-seater aircraft, and the pilot's in the left seat, the Naval Flight Officer is in the right seat. And we went through our emergency procedures. I pulled out the pocket checklist. We contacted air traffic control, let them know that we had an emergency and that we were going to have to take an arrested landing. So what that means is that you have to put your hook down and get the arresting gear at the airfield, because you won't have the ability to stop your aircraft. Once you blow your gear down, you electrically put your flaps and slats down, then you have to take an arrested landing. So we let them know that. We were headed over to a Navy base to land when we lost all of our hydraulics. So the A-6 has a dual hydraulic system, and that also has a backup system. And the backup system really is for just if you're straight and level, but your other hydraulic systems, if you lose those, you have to pretty much eject unless you're on final and you're getting ready to land. So that's what we had to do. We had to eject 15,000 feet over the ocean. It was in February. And I went first, and then my pilot went second, and there's rocket motors in the aircraft that basically propel the seat. I'm giving the simple version, propel the seat up out of the aircraft, and you get a parachute, and there's lots of other things you have to go through on your way down when you're in your parachute to prepare for water entry. And there's actually a raft that's attached to your seat pan. And that you release that and it inflates automatically. So then whenever you get into the water, you can climb into your raft. And so that's what I did, climbed into my raft and waited for rescue, basically. And so it was about an hour, and long story short, but my radio was dead.
Mm.
So whenever they were calling, I was trying to call them, there was no communication. And whenever the search and rescue helicopters were trying to contact me, they couldn't contact me either. But thank goodness, they did find me, and a rescue helicopter came overhead, a rescue swimmer came down, wrapped me up in the horse collar, reeled me up, and off to the hospital I went. Just very few injuries, actually. So it was yeah, a unfortunate situation, but neither my pilot nor I were seriously hurt, so that was good.
Wow, that's incredible. Because when you ejected, didn't you briefly lose consciousness in the air?
I did. Yeah, I passed out because I cannot remember the amount of instantaneous G's, but there's a large amount of instantaneous G's once you eject. And so I lost consciousness, and then I came to in the tug of my parachute. And yeah.
Wow. So you came to in the air.
In the air. I'm actually more afraid of it thinking back on it now than I was at the time. So yeah, because you're young. When you're young, you're just kind of, living life, and nothing really scares you really. And also your training is really great. The military does a really great job in training their aviators. And so you feel like you're well prepared for an emergency when it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, wow. So when did you find out that you were the first woman to eject in this type of ejection?
The Martin Baker. So I was actually, there were over 6,000 ejections at the time. And yeah, I was the first woman. And they called me a couple weeks at the Martin Baker Company, which is out of England, had called me a couple weeks after the ejection and asked me, what do you want? Because normally what they do is they give the guys ties, Martin Baker ties, whenever they eject, and you have a certain number, like your ejection number, and so they'll give you a tie. And they asked me what I wanted since I was the first woman, and I really just left it up to them. And so what they did was they made this beautiful little pewter pin for the first woman ejectee, and they presented it to me at a big event that they had in Washington, D.C. about 6 months later. But the interesting thing is they wanted me to come over and receive the pin from Princess Diana. And the Navy did not allow me to go over and get it, which I'm really, so disappointed now, But anyway, so I went to this event that was actually celebrating 6,000 lives. It was right around the time of the Gulf War, the end of the Gulf War. And so there were the 6,000 crew were there, and then there were several people there from Vietnam era who had ejected 2 and 3 times, and so really amazing heroes, and so it was a really wonderful celebration, and wonderful to meet those people, those men.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Wow, very cool.
And Martin Baker's been really great to me over the years. I've kept in touch with them, and yeah, they've been really great.
That's really cool. Did you wind up getting a watch or something, or did you buy the watch?
So I should have brought it out for this call, but so my husband bought me a watch. The Bremont company has some arrangement with Martin Baker, and they have a watch that's just for ejectees. And so it has a red band around it, which delineates that you're an ejectee. And so my husband bought me the watch. They offer you half price on the watch because they're really expensive. And so he got it engraved on the back of it. And so he said, I think it's my initials, number 1, in the year I ejected. And so he got me that a couple years ago. So that was really, nice. It's a big watch, though. It's definitely a guy's watch, but I do wear it, every now and then.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow. So this actually happened, I don't know if it was relatively early in your Navy career, but you were actually in the Navy for many years afterwards, including when women finally got the ability to fly and participate in combat.
Yep.
So what was that like?
So yeah, that happened when I was a young lieutenant. I was a nugget at my squadron, and that was 1991. In 1993 is when the combat exclusion law was repealed, and I actually was able then to transition to a combat squadron. And I was then flying as a Naval Flight Officer in the EA-6B, which is a 4-seater jammer jet. And so there's a pilot, then 3 Naval Flight Officers, and you either sit in the front as a navigator, basically handling all the radios, the electronic weapon systems, all the navigation, or there's 2 electronic countermeasure officers in the back that handle all the um, uh, electronic countermeasure things like jamming and also the HARM missile. It's a high-speed anti-radiation missile. And so that aircraft is now retired. I feel a little bit old saying that, but it was a national asset, and it flew on and off aircraft carriers. So when I transitioned over to a fleet squadron to fly in combat, I was in the first group of women on a West Coast aircraft carrier to join that air wing. And that was, I went on cruise, a 6-month cruise in 1995. And it was difficult. I mean, it definitely was challenging. Out of about 5,000 people on the aircraft carrier, about 500 total women at the time, maybe, I want to say about 20 women aviators total. And it was definitely challenging. I mean, I learned a lot. I probably would have handled, I know I would have handled things so much differently now, knowing what I know now as more of a mature person, you know?
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I think the military, the Navy handled it as best as they could. It definitely comes down to leadership because, you know, if you have a commanding officer who's very supportive, it rolls downhill. And, but if you have, you know, a commanding officer or leadership that's not supportive or they give mixed signals, it just makes it difficult. And one of my good friends, who was a woman, died on that cruise. Before the cruise, she flew F-14s. She was the first woman F-14 pilot. Her name was Kara Hultgreen. And it just created a whole hornet's nest of, because, you know, then the press was in the middle of it. Was she really qualified? She crashed at the boat at the carrier. And so it was painful. You know, it was definitely living life in a fishbowl, because any mistake that any woman made was, you know, really highlighted. And so you know, many of the guys were really great, were really supportive, but there were also ones that absolutely hated us and didn't want us there. So, you know, it was just there was a whole, you know, bunch of different types of personalities. And but again, it was you know, a good learning experience, life experience, because, you know, it encourages me now. I have boys, they're teenagers now, and I hopefully try to instill in them to just treat everybody with, you know, respect and courtesy. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're qualified to do a job, you should be, you know, given the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds
Yeah.
like despite all that, you were still able to, become a naval flight officer and fly
Yeah.
missions and different sites, and that you really had that experience there. Wow.
Yeah, and I'm glad I did. I mean, you know, it was a great life lesson, and it offers the military really just offers great. I always call it the military advantage. And because I really believe that the military, whether you serve 4 years or 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, it really sets you up for life, because, you know, the military is always all about mission accomplishment, working as a team. And you know, there's just no room for, like, you know, people will ask me, you know, how is it when different types of people come together? And I said, you know, I loved it because I didn't see racism. I didn't see, even though there were some issues with women and men and the guys kind of sometimes, you know, not wanting us there. Bottom line, I think the military was really good at presenting a level playing field. And it's really based on, you know, how well you do and how hard you work, and, you know, just great leadership skills. And I love that about the military. If you want to do well, you're going to do well.
Yeah, that's great.
You
And
know?
that sounds like such a great experience. And you had that for many years and really
Yeah,
did a lot
absolutely.
of great
Yeah.
things. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you end up retiring from the Navy, you said in 2004
Right.
or so, and then kind of started your career in more of the business area, contracting and such. And then,
Right.
now you're a business owner yourself and also working on some volunteer projects. So
Right.
since then you've become, you've started the Women Veteran Speakers, which is your own business. So what
Right.
inspired you to start that business?
So when I did retire in 2004, that also happened to be the first year, or the year I had my first son. So I started later in life. And so I had both of my kids in my 40s. And so I just thought a lot about the legacy that I would pass down to them, and especially being an older parent, and they weren't going to experience my military career with me because I had ended it. And so I just thought a lot about that. And so I put together a book called Military Fly Moms. And it's a story about 70 women aviators from all military services who are moms. And so I did some speaking after that book was published in 2012. But my husband was pretty busy in his career and traveling a lot. So I wasn't, and my kids were young, and I wasn't able to travel. And so I had teamed with another woman veteran, and we started a women's speakers agency with women veterans. And we did that for about 4 or 5 years. We learned the business, we learned the industry. And then about 5 years ago, I wanted to grow the business, but she, like me, just filled up her plate. She was too busy to put more time into it. She owns a publishing company, and she was just very busy. So I took the business over. I changed our name to Women Veteran Speakers. I changed up our business model, and we started growing. And so I've been doing that for the last 5 years. I work a full-time job. So I do this, in every other second, hour, minute of the day, at night and early in the morning. And I love it. And so interestingly enough, over the last year, a year ago, obviously with the pandemic, we saw a lot of just major changes in the speaking industry. And at the time, we were primarily a speaker booking agency, and we booked speakers, coaches, trainers, facilitators for all different types of clients: corporate, colleges and universities, professional organizations. And we still do that, but over the last year, we decided to tweak our business model a little bit. And now we're primarily a marketing agency, like where we really 75% of our time, and I have an executive assistant that works with me who I just love, and she's the glue that kind of keeps us together. And so we probably about 75% of our time is focused on highlighting and marketing our members. Our members pay an annual membership, very low fee, to be part of our agency, and we market them via email marketing and social media and all different types of platforms. So that we still do, book our speakers, coaches, trainers, and facilitators, but the majority of our members have very established businesses. So we give them the option of whether they want us to book them, or they can, use their own business model to book themselves. So there's a lot of great flexibility, but at the very basic foundational level, they get all these marketing and, highlighting opportunities with a, established speaking marketing agency.
Oh, wow. Well, that's really interesting. Wow. So
Yeah.
how do you get the women veteran speakers? Like, I mean, even starting out, I know you'd written a book that had all of these, so many different profiles. Did you draw on that to get your first sort of group of speakers?
A little bit, but I just did, I Googled. I also used my network. I mean, I have a very wide network of women veterans that I know. And so I started reaching out, and a lot of them came to me too. And and we're not exclusive. So what I would do is I would look at, where the women veterans were, where the, speakers, coaches, trainers, facilitators were. And if they weren't exclusive with another agency and they wanted to join us also, we invite, if they're, they have, materials ready to go, and they have a professional social media following, and they have an pretty much established business. Most of our members have established businesses, although we do bring in some up and coming speakers and other types of members. And we also we have a lot of connections with speaker coaches, speaker business coaches, so that maybe if somebody is newer to the business, they can go get some coaching first and, get their feet wet and get their foundation, and then we'll bring them on board. So even now I probably get, 2, 3, 5 requests a week to join the agency. But we really do try to, we're pretty selective. I'm really protective of our brand. And so you have to have an relatively established business to be invited into the agency.
Wow. Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, I love it. I really do love it. And the women are just amazing. Just really, and the thing I love about it too is that they all have the common denominator that they're veterans, but they all have a bunch of other varied skills in their toolbox. Like some have doctorates, some are authors, lawyers, just a wide variety of different skill sets. Some just do coaching all the time. Some do a variety. Some do coaching and training, and some just do webinars. Obviously, the last year has been difficult. The women who have been able to pivot quickly to virtual type of events haven't seen much of a change in their business, but it's definitely impacted everyone.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I could see that.
Yeah, even the clients. I mean, we're starting to see, an increase in bookings, but it's definitely been slow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So, and as you said, people, the speakers that you work with they come from all different types of backgrounds, even though they have that sort of common military service background.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine they probably speak on a variety of different topics. It doesn't necessarily have to be just military.
The interesting thing is that in order of revenue generating, because obviously I'm a for-profit business. So in terms of our target market, obviously corporate's number one. And then colleges and universities, professional organizations, and last but not least are veteran-related organizations, which is unfortunate, but many times veteran-related organizations don't have the funding to book speakers or to book, trainers, speakers. And so, one of the next things that I would love to do, if I could just fit it into my day, add like 10 more hours, is I would love to get sponsorship from corporate sponsorship to offer funding for veteran-related organizations that don't have the funding to bring in a speaker, bring in a trainer. But that might be the next year or two down the down the road. So yeah.
Well, that sounds good. Wow. So, you're very busy with you have your full-time career and then you have the women veteran speakers.
Right.
And I understand that somewhat recently you kind of became involved in more of, I don't know if it's I call it your volunteer project, but it's also related to the military, called Proudly She Serves. So tell me, how did you hear about that and get involved with that? And tell us more.
So probably about 3 years ago, I received a phone call from this artist out of New York City. His name's Steve Alpert. And he was referred to me by another woman who's part of my agency. And so she said, you have to meet Linda Maloney. So he calls me up, starts telling me I have this great idea about this project that he had painted one woman veteran, Dawn Halfacre, who owns a defense company in Washington, D.C. And she had lost her arm, I think, over in Iraq. And Steve painted her, and he had this vision that he needed to paint other women veterans. And so he and I pretty much started the project from the ground up. We, came up with the name, Proudly She Served, our logo, our website. We also have a small team. Everyone works pro bono. It's a total volunteer event. I'm the project manager. Steve's the executive director. And so we have 12 women veterans. Two are active duty, but the rest are veterans. And Steve has painted huge portraits of each one of these women. He's met them, and we found them a variety of ways. And most of them are women that I knew of or had in my network. Some are very well known. Probably the most well known is Senator Tammy Duckworth. And then Nicole Malkowski, who's their first woman Thunderbird pilot. Also Dee Haydu, who was one of the women Air Force service pilots from World War II. And she just died in January. She was 100 years old, and she just passed away. But so we have 12 women, like I said, some are just everyday heroes, some are more well known. And we also have a coffee table style book that also is going along with the portraits. And so we're going to have a portrait unveiling and book launch in August of 2022 at the Military Women's Memorial in Washington, D.C., which is actually in Arlington, right next to the Arlington National Cemetery. Beautiful. If anyone has never been there, it's absolutely beautiful. It's the Military Women's Memorial in Arlington. And so right now we're starting to raise funds to get the book published and to have the portrait unveiling and the book launch. It's going to be a huge event at the memorial. And then a year following after the portrait unveiling and book launch, we will have a national exhibition tour where the portraits will travel to 10 key locations throughout the country. And there'll be a curriculum that goes along with the portraits, and hope to have speakers and some of the women that are portrayed in the portraits speaking at the events. And it's the mission of the whole project is to, number one, highlight why women serve. And just the importance of service. Maybe it's not military service, but to hopefully encourage young people to serve in some way, whether it's with the military or some other way to serve. And then another mission of the project is to inspire young women and young men to really reach for the stars, and that they can do whatever they, want and whatever they dream of. Because in each one of these women's stories, you'll just see how they grew up and what their dreams were, and how they accomplished their dreams, and how they're still serving after the military.
Wow. That's amazing how that idea went from basically, an idea or a seed of an idea 3 years ago to like a coffee table book and a tour and an unveiling and everything kind of planned out.
It's just day in and day out. Like Steve and I are I always say we're like, siblings from another mother. I mean, like we're so different too. Like, he is very artsy and has these great ideas. I'm more of the black and white, to the point, more type A. I'm very type A. And so he and I work really well together. We've actually met with our spouses for dinner, and but he and I talk a couple times a week, and it's just day by day, just working on it and having that dream that it's gonna happen. We're gonna do it. It's just gonna take some time. And right now we're in the phase of trying to raise funds, and our team is just amazing. Like, we have a really amazing group of volunteers, and the website is proudlysheserved.com if anyone wants to take a look. But we have some college interns that do a lot of our social media. Like, I know nothing about Instagram. Like, LinkedIn is kind of my thing.
Yeah.
But one of our college interns, Bella, is just amazing at Instagram, and she just has put it together. It's just some really amazing social media. And we have another intern who does a lot of our videos, and Tori, she's wonderful. And so, and we have just some really great people who have, like I said, they're all working pro bono. So hopefully at some point sometime we'll be able to reimburse them for some of their time, So.
Yeah, that is really cool. So, and the coffee table book, it sounds like, obviously the portraits are in there, but it sounds like there's also some stories from the women or about the women. Or how did that come together?
So we also have an amazing writer and editor, Sarah Woodfin, who's a Navy veteran. And it's interesting how I found Sarah. I had posted on LinkedIn that we were looking for a writer and editor, and her husband actually sent me a note. Sarah's not even on LinkedIn. And her husband sent me a note, and he said, my wife, Sarah, would be perfect for this. He said, I don't think that she'll send you a note because I don't think she thinks she's, qualified. And I reached out to her. She has been amazing. I mean, just so perfect. She's really brought the stories to life. And so initially what happened was I had researched information about each woman, and I had asked each woman some questions, the same questions, and had her respond to them. And then I gave Sarah all that content, and Sarah added to it. She interviewed some of the women, and she put together these beautiful stories. Then in addition to this, Steve writes an intro to each one of the stories. And I didn't know he was a beautiful writer. In addition to being a great artist, he's a beautiful writer. And so he put together beautiful introductions to each one of the women's stories. So in addition, yes, to their portraits and photographs in the book will also be their stories.
Wow. And so it sounds like the book it sounds like it's basically done or close to done. And now
It's
you're
in the
raising
final
funds.
stages. Yep.
Very cool. And you're raising the funds now to print it or publish it, or?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
right.
Yep.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah, well, Linda, that's amazing. You're involved in so many like really awesome and cool things that are just like so meaningful. And especially, this podcast is all about sharing stories and really elevating the stories that people may not necessarily know of all the
Right.
amazing things that people have done in their careers and in their past. So I think that's really exciting that you'll be
Yeah,
sharing
thank
that
you so much for
transmedia.
giving me the opportunity to talk about it.
So yeah, I mean, this has been great. How can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about women veteran speakers or Proudly She Served?
Well, they definitely can go to womenveteranspeakers.com. They can find me on LinkedIn at Linda Maloney. They can find me at proudlysheserved.com. So I'm all over the place, so they can easily find me, or they can find me through you, right?
Yep. And I'll put links to the two websites, and I'll put your LinkedIn link in there as well in the show
Okay,
notes, so
great.
people can just click on it from right
Okay,
there
cool.
and
Thank
find
you so
there.
much.
Sure. And, as we close out, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know, or anything else that they can help or support you with?
Well, we will be pretty soon doing a crowd fundraising opportunity for the Proudly She Served project. So we will be posting that. Look for that over the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. All right. Sounds great. Right. Thank you so much, Linda, for being on my podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome, Carolyn. Thank you.